focus. This is Nyla. Nyla is East Coast, West Coast. She's the rap hip hop star for both coasts. This is her roadmap to success. Now, in the video we went above, we talked about teaching her to stay. I'm not going to go through all the details for that, but make sure you follow those instructions. This is going to be a video about all the other things that we talked about during the session. Now, she is exercise, but she probably could get a little bit more exercise. I offered a bunch of tips for the Guardian to use. I went over how to teach your dog to drop. If you forget how to do that, make sure you message me or call me. I can share videos with you. But the the synopsis of it is, when she has a low value item like a tennis ball or something she's allowed to have, pull out a treat, hold it in front of her nose, don't give her any prompts or commands, wait. As soon as she drops it, pop it in her mouth and don't touch the item on the floor. We want to do this with low value items first, and then eventually when she has something that she's not allowed to have, we say drop it, she spits it out. That will help prepare her for the fetch. And when I do the fetch, as I throw the ball, I say fetch. When the dog picks it up off the ground, I say fetch. She went to go grab a ball. And then when she brings it to me, I offer the treat, and when she drops it, I pop it in her mouth and say fetch a third time. This is kind of a synopsis of a lot of the things I went over in the session with the Guardian, was to break things down in individual steps and help the dog practice one step at a time before we moved on to the next step. And before we do that, we strip away all the additional layers. So it's just one easy little thing the dog is doing, help it practice and learn it over and over. And once it's practiced it and does that step well, then we do the next step. So the drop prepares the dog for dropping later on when we're doing the fetch. So one thing can kind of lead and set up another. Now we also, during the first part of the session, we went over some structure. Basically, I think that Nyla is petted so much that she really doesn't have to ask for it, but she doesn't have a problem nudging us or tapping when she wants attention. Well, if she does that and I pet her, then that's telling her, yes, you're in charge of me, because when you tell me what to do, I do it. Well, if she thinks she has dominion over me, she also needs to protect and look out for me. So for her Guardian, I think that she's probably doing things like trying to get, she's sometimes reacted to some select dogs. And I think she might be saying, look, my Guardian might be taken advantage of by these dogs. I have to be on duty because there's no rules for me. I can tell my Guardians when to pet me. And so that creates a misconception of where the dog's position or authority position is. So basically we went over petting with a purpose, which is if the dog nudges me or demands attention, Nyla, come. There we go. So I go like this to put her in a sit. Sit. So I raise over her head to put her in a sit, and once she sits, I lower it, let her lick it off my hand, and then I tickle her under the chin and say the word sit, and not good sit, or not Nyla sit, just sit. She's not coming. The lower you go to the ground, typically the more appealing it gets to the dog. So sit, sit. So if she's nudging, now if she does what she's doing here, of course she's not doing it now because we worked on it, but if she puts her paw up on me, immediately stop petting as soon as she does that. But if she nudges me or barks at me or swats at me to get me to pet her and I pet her, then that helps reinforce her belief that she thinks she's in charge of me. So what I do instead is when she tells me what to do, I don't do anything other than give her a counter order, tell her to sit. She's already sitting here, ask her to sit here, ask her to lie down, whatever it is. Once she's changed her state following your instruction, then pet her and say whatever the thing is. Now, if she doesn't do it, just say it once. Remember, the more we repeat a command, the less we mean it. So if I say sit, and she doesn't sit, after 3 seconds, I'm not going to ask her to do it again. I'm just not going to reward her. So after a while, she'll start figuring out every time I sit, I get petted. Every time I don't get petted. And now I can't tell them what to do anymore. So what will happen is after a while, the dog will start sitting in front of us to prepay for attention. Now, I mentioned this off camera, but a lot of us actually train our dogs to misbehave because that's when we give the dog attention. Attention is ultimately validating for a dog, and there is really not a big difference between good attention and bad attention. So if stealing slippers or chewing the carpet or barking or whatever it is gets my human to come over and correct me, well, that's a reward for me as a dog. So I'm now motivated to do the wrong things to get attention. So instead, I'm coughing too. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to give the dog a counter order and tell it what to do. After a while, it'll start sitting in front of us to prepay for that attention. Now, when it does that, make sure we do pet it and say whatever the command word is. Now, we won't realize how often we pet the dog without a purpose, and so I'd like the Guardians to refrain from doing that whenever possible. You can pet your dog as much as you want. I'm just saying, ask the dog, come, to do something to earn it first. Come. Yes, she's a little bit frisky right now, I can tell. So basically, and I use the watchword paycheck for that. So if I come in the room and see someone's petting Nyla and she's not standing or she's not sitting, I say paycheck. That just means I think you may have forgotten to pet. The person says stop petting, tell her to sit or lay down or something else, pet her under her chin whenever possible, and then say sit, and then tell the person, you missed it, I asked her to sit, she stood up when she came in the room. Now, I also do practice what I call passive training. Passive training is what I was just doing there. Every time the dog does a desired actions or behavior, if you pet it within that 3-second window and say whatever the command word is, you put it in context and you provide the dog with the motivation to want to do that again in the future. So every time your dog comes to you, you should pet it and say come. Even if it's just walking by, pet it and say come as it walks by. Every time it sits, pet it and say sit. Every time it says lay down, it lays down, pet it and say crash, or whatever your word is. And you can also use this method to train your dog to do weird things. So if your dog sits up like this and kind of maybe you say, what do they call that? Whatever the boxers do. But you come up with a fun command word for that. We call this free shaping. So you wait for the dog to do something that you like and you mark it and reward it, and then the dog, after enough repetitions, will do it. In my experience, it usually takes about 2 to 3 months for a dog to learn something through passive training, but it's just really, I like it to be kind of a supplement and something that the guardians are doing all the time. Same with petting with a purpose. So no more free pets, because only leader dogs get free pets. And if she's the leader dog, then she's responsible for us, and she's responsible for us. She tells us what to do. We don't listen. We go out without her, and that stresses her out, and that amplifies the separation anxiety. So all these things are kind of interconnected. So the more that she thinks she has to earn it, we take that burden of responsibility off her shoulders. The stress goes off her shoulders, and she can relax. Okay, let me see. So that's petting with a purpose and passive training. Great ways to use positive reinforcement to help your dog be motivated to do the things that you want. Now, I also like to flip the leader-follower dynamic by incorporating rules and and structure. So for the dog, one of the rules I suggest is not allowing the dog to sit at the same height as a human. The higher a dog sits, the more rank or social status they have. Sitting at the same height says we're peers. And then if the dog sees you as a peer, then listening to you is optional. So what we do instead is don't allow the dog on the furniture. Now, if the dog does get on the furniture, instead of forcing the dog off, I like to be force-free. So what I do is I pull out a treat, touch the dog's nose with it, and then I would just toss it on the floor right in front of the couch. Far enough away the dog has to get off the couch to get it. When it licks it up with its mouth, then I would say the word off. I would also teach her to leave every room in the house. This is Venice. This is a mansion. You guys don't realize how big this place is. But basically what we do is take one of these treats, split them in half, and go to each doorway in the room. And the dog's here, and this is the doorway, and that's the hallway. Touch her nose and toss it right outside. When she comes out, goes out and licks it up, we say the word out. And then let it come back and do it a second time. We do it once a day. If each guardian does this once a day, or twice a day, for the week, after a while you say out, and the dog leaves the room gleefully expecting to get a reward. At the end of 30 days, or however long the period of time is, the dog's allowed on the furniture if a human decides and grants that privilege, and that's what it is. It's not a right, it's a privilege. So if the dog is invited on the furniture and it starts barking, now it has to get down. Or if you invite the dog on the furniture and then it goes to get a drink of water, when it comes back, it would need another invitation to get up on the couch. That way the human's controlling the resource, not the dog. And the dog sees a literal distinction. If you do this, make sure you have a dog bed. She already has a dog bed and loves it, so I'm not going to go through that. Let me see. Other rules would be she's not allowed to be in the kitchen when we're cooking. She doesn't go in there already anyways. But if it's Venice and we have a really nice weather here and a huge backyard for Venice, and I'm not joking about that one. So every time we let her out, if the door is closed, make her sit before we let her in or out. And if she doesn't sit, walk away after 3 seconds, sit down, wait 1 minute, have your Alexa give you a timer, and then go back and tell her to sit again. She doesn't sit this time, wait for 2 minutes, then for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. So each time she doesn't comply, she has to wait twice as long before you ask her and give her that one opportunity. But remember, don't repeat a command. You might even have a watchword for this, so if we see each other repeating a command word, we might say repeat or rerun or something like that to help us not do that. Also avoid using the expression good dog. You can use it doesn't hurt, but it doesn't help either. And I'm all about doing things as efficiently as possible. If every time the dog comes to me and I pet it and say sit, come, lay down, and I just say those command words, not good sit, not go potty, just potty or sit or come, it just makes it easier for the dog. Okay, let me see. Other rules for the bed. If she's going to sleep in the bed, she would need an invitation there, just like the other furniture. We have a little carpet area rug around the table in front of the couch, between the couch and the TV. She should not be on that rug when we're eating food there. Also, kind of create a box around your kitchen table. And some people put painter's tape down so the dog knows exactly where it is for a week or two. And then use those escalating consequences to move her away. Escalating consequences, number 1, hiss. Number 2, stand up abruptly, turn to face her and keep pivoting until she's stationary. And take 2 steps backwards, only 2 steps, pause for 1 second, and go back to doing what you're doing. That's the second consequence. The third one is to march directly at her until she turns sideways or greater away from you. As soon as she does that, stop. And then we go to the second consequence. Now I'm pivoting as she moves around. When she's stationary, I take 2 steps back, pause for 1 second, then go back to doing what I'm doing. The only time that wouldn't apply is if the dog turns sideways in a designated no-dog zone. So delayed gratification, I'll come back to this, but if we're playing fetch, make her sit before I throw the ball. Sit. She didn't sit, so I'm not throwing the ball. My game, my rules. Asking your dog to sit is the smallest thing your dog can possibly do. Now, I'm going to watch her out of the corner of my eye. If she does SAT, I'm going to immediately throw that ball. And if our timing is good with that, remember we have 3 seconds to correct or reward the dog for them to make the connection. It has to be repeated a lot. But if as soon as she does that, the ball gets thrown, after a while she figures out that sitting down gets the dog to win. Santa Monica Airport is right over there. Okay. So going back to the escalated consequences, we'll wait for this little guy to go past. So the third consequence, if I march directly at the dog, but it's in an area like in front of the table or near something with food and turn sideways, I'm going to ignore that and bump into it until it gets outside the distance. Ideally, we'd like the dog to be at least 7 feet away from the human who's eating or preparing food. Let me see. The fourth consequence is leash timeout. Put her on a leash, step on the leash, and give her just enough room to stand or sit. Wait for her to sit on her own. Don't tell her to sit. When she sits, take the foot that's on the leash, slide it towards her, take the tension off the leash, then wait for her to lay down. Again, don't tell her. As soon as she lays down, she's calm. I very subtly take my foot off the leash. At that point, she's free to walk around. Now, she'll drag the leash, and she's going to do that. It's dangerous, so make sure she's only supervised when she's on the leash. But if a minute or two go by and she's nice and calm, then we detach the leash. It's not a quid pro quo. Let me see. Did I mention the drop in this video already? Yeah, I think I did. We talked about one thing leading to another, right? So when she has a low value item, hey.
Oh, yes.
I won't interrupt.
Okay, no, please. So we have a friend that just came by. So basically, so what we want to do is, like I said, one thing leads to another. Let me see. We also went over a focus exercise here. Remember when we're doing that, we're going to have about 12 treats in our offhand. She really likes it over that person. Is that the dog walker?
No, it's my friend. She loves her.
So I can tell. You can see this. She's got what we call the zoomies. She's showing off for the friend. Up, sit. I can't throw it. So eventually she will figure that out and she'll start sitting. Okay, so for the focus exercise, I have 12 treats in this hand. I have my knees shoulder width apart, preferably having the dog sitting with its head about right here, same level as my knees. Oh, fetch. Fetch. So she likes to stay over there. We'll work on that. That's something that, but that's not a huge problem. Okay, so let me see. What was I going over? The focus exercise. So when we do this, I'm going to hold it on the flat sides between my thumb and forefinger, and there was a wet spot when we started here. It's from her licking. I did not have an accident. And so basically, I'm going to hold it like this, and she's going to lick at it and try to take it. And I have the other hands right here, so I want to try to make my hands look somewhat uniform. As soon as she looks up at me, I raised my nose and went straight line towards her mouth. And when I pop it in her mouth, after the treat went in her mouth, I said the word fetch. Or excuse me, I said the word focus. Then I immediately reloaded and played the game again. 12 treats. Now first it's 1 second, 1 second. After a while, 1 second, 2 seconds. Eventually, by the end of the week, we want 1 second, 20 seconds for that second movement. That's obviously not 20 seconds. Now do this in the house and different places in the house first. Once you get to 15 or 20 seconds within a week or so, then we want to practice this outside. But now we go back to 1 because there's a lot more distractions out here. But we can move a little bit faster because she already knows what we're doing. And then eventually we can do this when we're on walks or if there's something she's starting to stare at. Staring is usually a precursor to a problem. That's often a first warning for dogs. So if you see her staring intently at another dog and that dog is far enough away and you give her a focus, she'll snap out of it and then you can move her away from the other dog before she has to react on her own. Since the dog walker and people can come by and she doesn't have separation anxiety, it tells me that it's probably she thinks she's on duty when she's around her primary guardian, And so she's stressed out a little bit, probably has cortisol in her blood and some other things that are going on. So the more that we practice that, the stay exercise, as I described in the video above, the better equipped she's going to be and practiced at being alone. She disagrees, but it is going to be good for her. Now, we also went on a short little walk. She was a little bit reactive to some dogs on walks. This is actually demand barking. If you want to go ahead and shoot her real quick. What she's doing is she's demanding. She wants you to pick up the ball and throw it for her. That's a demand. And if you get up and do that, then that tells her and validates, yes, I'm in charge of the human. So you can come back to me. We want to ignore that when the dog does that. If it keeps on bugging and it bothers you, get up and leave. That's the fourth quadrant of operant conditioning is basically deducting something from the equation, or a negative punishment, as we like to call it. Now she's just staring at the ball, letting us know, I want you to throw that. Well, I asked you to sit. It's not a lot of, or bring me the ball, or whatever it is. Again, my game, my rules. So as we're going outside, make sure she doesn't go out the door first. She did a great job of that. When we got outside, I would keep the leash kind of short. The guardian had a tendency to kind of pick up the leash and hold the leash really when she was not jerking the leash, just when she was doing treat. She would give the dog a treat and kind of hold the leash up like this when she was doing it, which she didn't need to. And I think it's just self-conscious, and a lot of people do it. So just be aware of that. We did something I call the long walk. We walked basically just a block here in Venice. We were hoping to see some dogs. We didn't. But what I did is I had the dog stop next to its guardian every 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 steps. And then the guardian would give a treat, say the word sit. Or she would say sit first and then give it a treat. And then we continued maybe 2 steps this time. Next time, 5 steps or whatever it is. After maybe 5 or 6 treats, she was just kind of walking down the street looking up at her guardian. And that's the whole point. Instead of scanning around for trouble, I'm looking at the guardian to get a reward from the guardian. We also practice U-turns. Make sure you practice that once on every block. Do 2 of them, so that she's just used to doing that. And if you run into a dog or somebody that you don't know if she's staring at the dog, or you just think that she might be reactive, you turn around before that she even has a chance to do it. And the last thing is, if she lunges ahead of you on the end of the leash, as soon as she gets to the end of the leash, immediately, as soon as the leash gets tense, stop. Have a treat in your hand or pull it out of your holster and hold it like that. Make a kissing sound, like, or some sound to get her to call her name. The lowest level of a recall that we can, whatever we can. So what we want to do is have her look at you and hold the treat out. If she doesn't come right away, start lowering it. The lower you go, the more appealing the treat is or accessible for the dog. When she comes to you, basically, I like to, she's supposed to be on her right side. Pick one side for the walk. So if I'm holding the leash with this, I probably would hold it with my left. So she lunges, I stop, the leash gets tense, I say, she comes over to me. When she comes over to me, and if the dog's walking in this direction, I'll use this. Let's say this represents the dog's head. So the dog walking towards me, I'm going to lure the treat and do it a U-turn, and then get going this way. Then I'm going to raise it over the head when the dog sits, and I put it in its mouth. So what I'm doing is teaching the dog, when you hit the end of the leash, you should turn around and come back to the human and sit down, and you get a treat. And the dogs have what's called an opposition reflex. So if we try to pull them back, we are guaranteed that they're going to pull against us. That's not a lot of fun for the dog or for the human. Remember that if she stops to sniff something and we stop on the walk, we're kind of telling her that she can set the pace. So we don't want to say she can't sniff, but if we stop every time she wants to sniff, we can do that if we want to make the walk exclusively for her, because that's very stimulating and rewarding for her. But a lot of times we're doing this for exercise and we want to get somewhere, we want to go to Abbot Kinney or whatever, we can't stop every 2 seconds. And if she thinks she's driving on the walk, then that is again related to her thinking she's in charge, which impacts her separation anxiety. Puppy, puppy. Ah, Nyla. Didn't work there. Oh, there we go. Come. She didn't bring me the ball, but she didn't come, so I did reward that. Okay. Feeding. Make sure that the guardian, right now, sometimes she feeds the dog, and then she eats it like an hour or 2 later. So make sure that before whoever the feeder is going to eat something first. Now, the guardian had a dog behaviorist or trainer in New York work with her. One of the things that she had her doing is going to sit on her dog bed before the food. I would not necessarily do the dog bed. You can continue to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I just want the dog to not come within 7 feet of the food. Then I eat something in 5 or more bites. It could be a chip, a cracker, a carrot. Doesn't have to be a lot. And then when I get done, then I invite the dog over to take a bite, to eat its food. When it takes its first bite, come up with a command word. Chow, feast, whatever you, comida. And then when the dog takes its first bite. That way, after a month or 2, you can tell the dog to eat on command. And this way, the dog sees the human eating before them, which is it's really important for dogs, and that'll help the dog see the human as being more of the authority figure. Drop. We were able to achieve a drop. Now that was I could have done the fetch, but we want to set the fetch up with the drop first. So again, anytime she has a low value, this isn't super low, but something she's allowed to have an 8 point. See if we can get her to come and get it one more time. We'll see if we can get one more drop. She's looking at it. She's waiting for me to get up and throw it for her. I'm not going to do that. Oh, and that's another little thing. Make sure the guardians ask the dog to come to them as opposed to going to where the dog is. Another little thing is if the dog's standing in your way, blocking you, walk through the dog as if it's not there. The dog needs to learn when the human's walking around, I need to defer and get out of the human's way because that's what a follower thinks about. A leader thinks other people are going to get out of my way. Is there anything else I'm forgetting that you can think of? If you think of something later, I'm always available to you, so don't worry about it. Now remember, for the drop, only do it when she's got something in her mouth above. So she's right. Nyla. Drop it. After a while, you say drop and she'll spit that thing out at you. All right. Well, this is Nyla's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.